So you're looking to play a character that lives by their wits and has an answer for almost any problem they face? Well, it turns out you're in luck, because behind today's secret door, the Rogue Thief Test Drive. So behind today's Secret Door, the Rogue Thief Test Drive. This is Secret Door, a channel devoted to in-depth discussion about Dungeons & Dragons, and my name is Matt Morich. All right, I have started a Patreon. If you're interested in supporting the channel, your help would be greatly appreciated and much needed, and many thanks to Marcelo and Doug for your support. The link will be in the pinned comment and in the description. All right, well, a test drive is exactly what it sounds like. It's your ability to see how a character class is going to play out. It's a big commitment to start playing a new character, and you shouldn't have to make that commitment based on what you're able to interpret from what the books are telling you or what you're seeing in build videos. A test drive is designed to be able to show you how that character will play level by level. I'm going to take you from levels 1 through 10. I'm going to give you some ideas of what I think are going to be the optimal choices along the way. So a test drive is kind of buildish and it's kind of guide-ish. It's a test drive. Now, this one will definitely be more on the guide-ish side. All right, so we're going to get right to it. I don't think I need to touch on anything about role-playing at all. This is a thief rogue. It's one of the most iconic character types you could play in D&D. Now, in this particular one, I'm going to give like top picks as I go along here. I'm not going to give you this is the definitive pick. I will be using certain ideas to figure out how DPR will look, but even those numbers are not the final numbers because based on what few choices you do have to make, but what few choices you do make will influence those numbers. Now, as it happens, I love rogues. And the rogue didn't look like it got a lot of help in this edition. In fact, you could say that they were standing still while everybody else sprinted ahead 15, 20 yards. But the thief actually turns out, in my opinion, to be a very strong and interesting character to play. Now, for race picks, I'm just going to give you some basic ideas of what I think are going to be the best picks you could make. I'm going to suggest Wood Elf is going to be a very strong choice, if nothing else, because of that extra 5 feet in movement. Or you could simply go with Goliath, which also has another 5 feet of movement. Now, that extra 5 feet of movement is of real value to a rogue, because if you do use your cunning action to dash, you're effectively gaining that twice every turn. I'm going to tell you, though, the thief is not going to be using cunning action from level 3 forward in the traditional way, almost ever. But nevertheless, having an extra 5 feet of movement, whether you get to use it once or twice, is going to be very useful for positioning, and this character should be paying very careful attention to positioning. Now, if you went with Halfling Luck is worth about a 2.5% increase in your hitting chances and your ability with ability checks, saving throws, all that stuff. So the Halfling is going to be a very, very effective choice. Just to give you an idea of how that 2.5% affects DPR, in the lower levels, that could be 0.5 point. And then when you hit into mid levels, it could be worth 0.75 point in DPR. Now, that may not sound like very much, but it's actually every little bit you can get like that is going to help. Now, in relationship to DPR, one of the reasons that got me excited about this as I started really thinking it through, well, there's 2 reasons. One is that it really depressed me how when all the other martial characters were making this huge surge forward in DPR, the rogue didn't at all. And their numbers look even more pathetic in relationship to what the others can do. But the thief rogue can pull out some damage that is going to make them competitive. Now, I'm not trying to suggest that you're going to be the party's heavy hitter, although in early levels you're going to hit very hard, and then depending on how things work out for you, you could be hitting very, very hard. So my point is that that Halfling Luck really could make a difference for you. And it's, of course, very iconic to have a Halfling Thief. Regardless of what race you pick, The feat that I think is imperative to take here is Magic Initiate Wizard for Find Familiar. Now that's I'm a broken record on this point, but whether you take Find Familiar or not, and I strongly suggest that you do, but if you don't, you still want to take Magic Initiate because you want to be able to qualify as a spellcaster. Now, some of the races I mentioned, like Wood Elf, will qualify as spellcaster because of their racial abilities that they get. But you definitely want to have the capacity to cast a spell for reasons which we will address later. Now, on top of all that, of course, Find Familiar is amazing. It's great. It's wonderful. You want to take the owl. You really want the owl for advantage. But also, there's the deer. The deer is a 0 CR creature, a beast that has the agile trait. So they don't provoke attacks of opportunity. So the deer could run up to somebody, do something that's going to perform the help action, and then run away. In general, if this is what you're going to be using the familiar for, the owl is still preferable and it's a better scout. But however, the deer, if you were to play something like a halfling, you could theoretically use it as a mount. I am going to assume and suggest that you go with the owl. Now for stats, I'm going to suggest that you dump strength and that you're going to put a 15 into dexterity and a 14 into constitution. You're going to put your +2 into dexterity for a 17. You're going to put 2 points into intelligence for a 10, 4 into wisdom for a 12, and then you're going to buy a 13 charisma and put your +1 in there. You don't have to get to a 14 charisma. It's obviously going to help your social skills and all that. And you don't even need to have your charisma that high if you don't want the option of multiclassing at all. Now, this character may want to multiclass. I'm picking charisma because it's still very effective for a rogue with charisma, and multiclassing into either warlock or sorcerer for one level when it comes up could be very useful to you. And to do that, you would need to have at least a 13. And so if you're at a 13, you may as well put the +1 into there and get to a 14. Like I said, good for social skills, and it's going to be useful for multiclassing. Now, at level 1, we get a whole bunch of stuff. We get expertise. Of course, we get sneak attack. We get weapon mastery. And we get thieves' cant. Now, with weapon mastery, we're going to be wanting to pick Vex and Nick, and we're going to be dual wielding in the beginning, and we'll keep dual wielding as an option. In truth, you'll be able to switch from dual wielding to being shooting a bow if that's more appropriate. For the purposes of DPR, I'm going to be talking a lot about dual wielding and then switching out. This character does make a dramatic shift at level 3, but from there on, you're going to be kind of mixing and matching as things happen for you. But here at first level, even though you are simply just dual wielding, you're going to be doing some very good damage because you're going to be gaining advantage from the owl, and then presumably with that hits and you're hitting with Vex, you're then providing advantage even for your offhand attack. This is going to give you a 12.32 DPR at level 1, and that is really good damage. So here at level 2, you're going to get Cunning Action. Cunning Action is one of these abilities that I think is one of the stronger abilities in the game. And I say that because it's providing what would normally be an action in almost every other case as a bonus action that you get to use for the rest of your career. The only problem with Cunning Action is that there are a lot of desirable things that require a bonus action, so it's constantly a dilemma of which is going to take priority in that particular round. But that is kind of like a nice problem to have. So your DPR doesn't change from level 1 to here, but you're going to be a far more flexible character. And you've got expertise at level 1, which is giving you 4 skills that you're doubling your proficiency bonus in. In these early levels in particular, your use of skill and expertise is going to be a lifesaver to the party on many cases because spell slots are so precious at these early levels that if you have a lot of spellcasters in your party, they're going to be husbanding those spell slots very, very carefully. So it's, in a way, the rogue in the early levels is the utility character. But then we get to level 3. And when we get to level 3, of course, we get our thief subclass. Now, we also get Steady Aim. Steady Aim, if it costs a bonus action and you cannot move, and if you are making a ranged attack, you can make that with advantage. A very nice feature to have. Anytime you can get advantage on demand, even at that kind of a price, being completely immobile, essentially, and the consuming of a bonus action can very easily be worth it. But the big get here is, of course, what we're getting from the Thief subclass, and we're getting fast hands and second story work. Now, with second story work, we're going to be able to use our Dex score instead of our Strength score to determine our jumping ability. Now, since this character will easily have a maxed out Dex, that's a really nice feature to have. This is the fast hands that had my head spinning once I started thinking about it. So it gives you 2 extra ways that you can use your cunning action. One of them is sleight of hand, and that's great, but the other is use object. So now you can use your cunning action bonus action to perform the utilize action or the magic action with a magic item. Before we get too far into this, I should have said this at the outset. If you're playing at a table that your DM is really stingy with magic items, or you don't have the ability to craft, or you don't have magic shops where you can buy and sell and get what you want, and is also stingy, then don't play the Thief. Just don't even bother with it, because it is this feature that makes the Thief rock. I was oohing and awing when I did the Circle of Stars Druid test drive, because when they take their starry form, they can make themselves into the form of the archer, and that archer as a bonus action is providing a ranged attack, which is a nice, basically like a bow attack. And you're getting that as a bonus action on top of your main action being for casting spells. Here it's the reverse. With the Thief, you are making your sneak attack as your primary attack, and then as a bonus action, you're using an object. So the very first thing you need to grab is, of course, something easy. I'm going to be focusing on the things that are uncommon and easy to get. So your number 1 priority is to get a Wand of Magic Missiles. Now, a Wand of Magic Missiles is uncommon. It doesn't require attunement. It doesn't require you to be a spellcaster. So anybody can use this. If you get it, it has 7 charges. I'm going to suggest that you use 6 of them in any given day. It will recharge on the next day, but you may not get to a full recharge. Now, Magic Missile with a standard charge is going to be doing 3.5 points of damage. It never misses, and it's force damage. Now, I think as a spell, Magic Missile is fine. It's a solid, fine spell. There's nothing particularly ooh and awe to me about Magic Missile. I never recommend it on the spell list, even though, it's fine. But here, as a bonus action, oh yeah. This is where the problem becomes. And when I said you're going to be making a lot of shifts and changes, you have a Wand of Magic Missiles. You can't be dual wielding, then cast the Wand of Magic Missiles, and continue dual wielding after that. I mean, you could be dropping stuff and all that. Like if you had a bazillion weapons on you, you could maybe work this out. I'm not terribly interested in doing that. What I'm going to suggest is that half the day, half the combat, or I'm sorry, in half of your combat rounds, you are dual wielding, and then in the other half, you have the wand in the other hand. That's when you have 1 wand. There is no reason in the world you should not get 2. And in fact, I'm going to suggest that you get a 3rd wand as soon as humanly possible, and that's the Wand of Web, also uncommon. Now, I assume that there's going to be 3 combats in every day, each one lasting about 4 rounds. So that's 12 rounds of combat. If you had 2 Wands of Magic Missile and you didn't drain them dry and just went 6 charges out of the 7, then you would have a Magic Missile going off, a Magic Missile spell going off every round. That increases your DPR, potentially, if you had both of them, to 10.5. Now, if you only had 1, then you're going to be looking at that 10.5 being halved, and then you're going to be dual wielding in the other half with a weapon that isn't getting your proficiency bonus. Still, it raises your DPR significantly. Now, I'm not going to be talking a lot about wands, magic items, and all that type of stuff that go far beyond uncommon. I'm going to reach for rare here and there, and like one very rare item I'm going to mention. But because if you had crafting available to you, it's kind of an easy thing to be able to get a Wand of Magic Missiles. They're also not going to be very expensive to get. Same thing with the Wand of Web. Those are the only things that I'm counting on. And I'm not even counting on the Wand of Web. It's just that if you could get it, you absolutely should get it. Because folks, consider, all right, Web is a great spell and it will work throughout your entire career. So it's a bonus action for you to cast that spell. You only need one of those in every combat. So if your opening round is your regular attack, sneak attack, etc., and then web, well, that's a great opening round. And then in your subsequent rounds, it's your sneak attack and then magic missiling. Oh, yeah. Now, I don't normally incorporate magic items into this, but into test drives, but you have to with a thief because there's no reason to play a thief at all if you don't have access to magic items. So I have to assume that in the course of this test drive that you'll be able to get your hands on reasonable magic items. Another magic item, this is a rare item, is the Ring of Spell Storing. Now, its value is going to be comparative to what kind of casters you have in the party that will be able to refill it for you. Now, the Wand of Web does require attunement. As I said before, the Wand of Magic Missiles does not, and the Ring of Spell Storing would. Now, I'm not suggesting that at third level you're going to get all these things. I'm assuming here at third level you'll be lucky if you can get your hands on a Wand of Magic Missiles. And then as you progress, you're going to be getting 2. And then you're going to be able to grab the Wand of Web, or maybe you can get all 3 of those relatively quickly. If you can't get at least one of those here at third or fourth level, I would be before the campaign began, I would be very frank with the DM and just say, look, for my character to even be competitive or to work out, I need to be able to know that I'm going to be able to either craft or buy or whatever a Wand of Magic Missiles. Now, some DMs are just going to tell you tough. That's too bad. You got to take your chances. If that were their answer, I think I probably would pass on this class. You really need to be able to know that you can get your hands on these items because your damage is going to be okay. But even with the Wand of Magic Missiles, it only brings you up into being relatively competitive. And you're not even truly competitive with the heavy-hitting martial characters. But then when you start getting into some other stuff, then you start becoming crazy. So I'm just going to mention these here now since we're on the subject of magic items. As we advance through levels, if you can get your hand on Wand of Fireballs, that does change everything. Now here at lower levels, your DPR is going to be really, really good. As we advance through levels, it's going to be falling off and you're going to be behind. From 5th level forward, you're going to be behind the heavy-hitting martial characters. Right now, you're at level 3, especially if you do get a wand right away, you're going to be right up with the best of them. Now, if you did get your hands on a Wand of Fireballs, if you were just to hit 4 targets in an encounter with that, a fireball is going to do on average 21 points of damage. Times 4, that's 84. You're still, in that same round that you're fireballing, you're still getting your regular sneak attack thing going on and the fireball. So what you're missing out on is the magic missile in that round. So 84 points of damage minus 10.5 is 73 points of damage. When you amortize that over 12 rounds, that's an extra 6 points. If you hit 4, if you were to hit 3, it would go down to around, 4.5 or so. But that's just once in a day. What if you did that twice in a day? Now you're looking at 10 or 12 extra in DPR from a Wand of Fireballs over what just in those singular rounds, how much of a damage differential shift that it would make for you. And those are very reasonable assumptions, I think. Now, getting a Wand of Fireballs, that's a whole different thing. You won't need that to be competitive, but if you do get one of those, it's going to put you the very midst of the high damage dealers. It's the ability to be casting a spell as a bonus action, a leveled spell as a bonus action through a magic item that makes this character so strong. Frighteningly strong if you can get the right magic items. But that's the thing. So the sole reason I have you having a 14 charisma for multi-classing is because you need to have a 13 to qualify as a warlock or a sorcerer. And because charisma walks hand in hand very well with the rogue, you need to have a 13 anyway, so the having that charisma up to a 14 is fine, but it's going to allow you to qualify if you were to multi-class 1 level. If you were to come across something major, like something like a Staff of Power, that's like a very rare magic item. We're not talking legendary here, a very rare magic item. The Staff of Power, that's within reasonable grasp of expectation. Now, something like a Staff of the Magi or anything legendary, it's just like, who knows if that's going to happen. But very rare items, that's still within the realm of a reasonable wish for. Now, your DPR is around 15.68 here, dual wielding. But if you were to get that wand of magic missiles, it's going to push you to 20. That's if you've got one. If you got two of them, you're looking at third level, mind you. If you were to get two of them at third level, and I know that's a bit of a stretch, but if you did get two wands of magic missiles, your damage DPR would be looking at something like around 24 at third level, and that's astonishing. Now, will you get two? Probably no. But it's something to dream for, and just having the one is going to make you feel immensely powerful, and you're doing incredible damage at level 3. Now, at level 4, we're getting our ASI, and here's where I'm just going to kind of give you some choices here, because the one that can give you the most is one that I can't just say, take this and I'm going to figure it into my damage calculation, because it's so variable depending on the DM. Your best bet in a character like this is to go with something like Sentinel. Your ability to get your sneak attack on that off round on your reactions is going to be terrific, but it really just depends on how often your DM triggers Sentinel. But if it only triggers once per round, you're still looking at something around probably an increase of about 3 points of damage overall in DPR because of that one attack that you're going to be able to get. So it's going to be worth it. And if you can get more than that, if you can get two, then it's definitely worth it. But of course, that's the problem with Sentinel, is that you have to be there in the front lines just to avail yourself of it. And what if your DM doesn't trigger it and you're taking all that risk for nothing? So I can't, in good conscience, recommend it. I'm going to suggest that the one that I think would be the most fun out of the bunch that I could suggest would be Defensive Duelist. If you get hit by a melee attack, you're going to be able to use your reaction, and that reaction will then give you your proficiency bonuses in addition to your armor class, provided you're wielding a finesse weapon, which is easy for you, of course. That will last until your next round. So it's kind of like a miniature shield, but only for melee attacks. That doesn't cost you anything more than your reaction. No spell slots, no nothing, no limited amounts, just your reaction. So this makes you very slippery. You're going to be gaining extra defenses, layers of defense as this character goes along. This would be the beginning, if you went with Defensive Duelist, the beginning of that slippery nature of the character, which is a lot of fun. You could be right in the midst of all this danger and just come out unscathed. And it's a lot of fun. Now here at level 3 and 4, our sneak attack die went up to 2, and here at level 5, our sneak attack die jumps to 3, and we gain Cunning Strike and Uncanny Dodge. Cunning Strike is a new feature in this edition. You can sacrifice one of your sneak attack dice and gain an effect. Now, some of these effects are useful. It's kind of reminiscent of things like the Battle Master, but you don't have to pre-select these. You can just do them as you choose. There's one in particular that allows you to withdraw. I think that could be a very useful one, but they're all pretty good. It just depends on what your circumstances are, but it does allow some flexibility to be able to impose effects on the enemy rather than just straight damage. But because you're attacking with advantage all the time, that dice that you're giving up, that's 3.33 points of damage with advantage. So that's not something you just want to throw away. Uncanny Dodge, when you get hit by an attack and you have a reaction available to you, you can use your reaction to be able to have that damage. So if you went with Defensive Duelist, these could be potentially at odds. If your DM is calling out the AC that they hit, you'll know if Defensive Duelist would work, and if you just have to accept the hit, and if you do have to accept the hit, then you have Uncanny Dodge there to cut it in half. But these are two reaction points that are going to be coming up an awful lot now. So if you were thinking about something like Sentinel and how you wish you had taken Sentinel, it's these defensive options that no matter what happens, in other words, if you went with Defensive Duelist, you're going to have some kind of an answer simply at getting hit. You're either going to not take it at all, or you're going to take half. Very, very slippery, very satisfying. Now, your DPR with one wand of magic missiles, and otherwise dual wielding, will put you at 23.68. Now, folks, that's not great damage. It's simply okay, and that's with doing a wand of magic missiles half the time. But if you do have two wands, so you're using that every round, your number jumps to 28. Now, at that number, you are sitting right below where the big boys play. They're in the 30s. So if you did go with something like Halfling, you're going to be bumping that number up slightly because of Halfling luck. If you went with an offensive feat like, Sentinel, or if you even went with something like Piercer, at level 4, those feats are both going to bump those up slightly. Sentinel obviously will bump it up significantly. And of course, all this kind of goes out the window. This is 28 base. But if you did get a wand of fireballs, well then, then your number goes up even more. But if you did get the wand of web, your numbers would slightly decrease because you'd be using a bonus action to cast web. But you would also be inflicting web while dealing pretty good damage, comparatively speaking. So you see how important the magic items are to this character. It drastically affects your performance. But once again, we're just talking about 3 uncommon wands. So to make everything go, if you can get a wand of fireballs, fantastic. At level 6, you're going to gain expertise again. So you pick 2 more skills and they double your proficiency. And we don't get any difference here in our DPR because our sneak attack die did not go up. At level 7, we get evasion and we get reliable talent. This is kind of a jackpot level because both of these abilities are really, really strong. And of course, our sneak attack die jumps up to 4d6. Now, evasion, if you're making a dexterity saving throw, and that dexterity saving throw would save for half. If you save for no damage. Again, slippery. Reliable talent, you're able, if you are using a skill or a tool proficiency that you have proficiency in, then, and you roll a 9 or lower, you're able to treat that result as a 10. Now here, with DPR, we're getting another sneak attack, which means our damage is going to go up about 3.33, which puts us around 32 with 2 wands of magic missile. Now, we're 7th level at this point. You got 2 wands of magic missile. And if you don't, you're playing with a DM where you should not have played with this character to begin with. In truth, I think that by 7th level, it's going to be reasonable to assume that you have also acquired a wand of fireballs by this point. Or even something slightly better. This is where magic items that are big magic items are showing up in campaigns. Level 8, we get our ASI. Now, there's a variety of ways that we could look at this. You have an 18 dex right now. You're going to get another ability score at level 10. So you could easily go with the idea, I'm going to take another feat here and a feat at 10 to get me to that 20 dex. But here at level 8 and 9, you are going to be behind the curve if you do. On the other hand, if you don't do that, let's say you took the 2 dex here and then grabbed a feat at level 10, that point, assuming it's going into dexterity, will simply be wasted. Because you are a character that's going to be dealing with advantage virtually all the time, whether it's through the owl or being able to stealth and hide and all that kind of, whatever options you have available to, and you have plenty of options. Being 1 point behind the curve or 1 ability score behind the curve doesn't kill you, but it does obviously impede your numbers slightly. Now, there are several feats that I really, really like for a character like this. I'm just going to kind of name them out because maybe you want to take those earlier where I mentioned Defensive Duelist. So you could be looking at Crossbow Expert. Crossbow Expert is going to allow you to completely ignore the loading property of the crossbow. You could be dual wielding hand crossbows, which is obviously kind of a cool image. And that offhand attack will now gain your ability modifier, which would help. But in neither case do you want to be doing that because you want to go to the wand. Whatever magic item you have that allows a magic action to activate it is going to be more useful than whatever weapon attack you've got. So while I like Crossbow Expert, I'm not really going to suggest it. You could go with dual wielding, but again, by this level, you have the wands, I'm sure. So dual wielding is pretty much out. You're going to be attacking probably with a rapier and then casting something with a wand or with a ring of spell soaring or whatever item you have that you could have a cape of mountebank and be able to cast Dimension Door if you had a cape of mountebank. So there's all kinds of things that you could be getting. But something like Piercer, it doesn't wow you. if you roll a crit, you get to roll an extra dice. That's not awful, and you can re-roll one of your damage dice every round. That all adds up to about 1 point of DPR. I mean, you're also gaining the stat bump for it as well. So it's not wow, but it's a point of DPR. Or, there's still Sentinel. So Sentinel is going to be the one that has the most upside for damage, period. But how often is it going to trigger? And you are going to have the competition between the reactions at that point as well, between Defensive Duelist, Sentinel, and Uncanny Dodge. But again, that is a wealth of choices to have. If you did do something like Sentinel, you had a DM that was moving characters all over the place, and so it's triggering regularly. And if you did get something like a Wand of Fireballs, your DPR is going to be crazy high. But those would be my recommendations. I'm not going to figure them into the calculations. We're just going to run to 9 and 10 at this point. The important thing to grasp here is just the sheer power of what you get at level 3 with that fast hands option, because your attack with sneak attack, it's going to be good. It's not, but you've only got the one, and it's not enough to compete with the other marshals. But with that bonus action casting, you sure can compete and maybe even beat a lot of the other marshals. And we're talking about level 8 here, so the magic items are going to get even bigger. Your options to get something to like a Staff of Power, that's certainly not, that's a very rare magic item. I'm not saying you will find one or can get one crafted or whatever, or buy one, whatever, but it's just a very rare, not legendary. It's still within that realm of dreaming. Now, at level 9, our sneak attack dice has jumped to 5. And we also get a thief feature, which is one that falls under an option for Cunning Strike, which is stealth attack. It costs 1d6, and if you have the invisible condition from being hidden, when you come out and make an attack, it doesn't negate the invisible condition if you end your turn behind 3/4 cover or better. Now, this is, of course, circumstantial, but folks, this is Arkham Batman kind of stuff we're talking about. This is a really cool feat and cool feature. Now, if you are by yourself and often the rogue is up scouting, often ahead, this allows you to get into some really fun scenarios. If you're playing in a solo campaign, this is the kind of thing where you could really just go to town. But with a big party, it's still going to be useful, obviously. But with a DM who isn't going to be providing a lot of those kind of things in big combats, lots of places for cover, then obviously this kind of an ability could be very, very limited. But if the circumstances are there, super cool ability. Definitely worth the D6. And I don't say that lightly. I really don't. I don't think I would be using Cunning Strike very often. But for the right circumstances, to be able to use that D6 to be able to get out of a jam or to be able to stay hidden, that's great. Now, your DPR at this point is going to be somewhere in the 35, 36 range with 2 Wands of Magic Missile. If you did get something like that Wand of Fireballs, you're going to be looking at something that's going to be pushing you into the 40s. It could be the mid-40s and it could be the high 40s, depending on how many targets you're able to hit, how often that's going to happen. But like I said, just even getting one encounter where you're hitting 3 or 4 targets will jump you 4 or 5 points in your DPR. So at this point, you are with those heavy hitters without the Wand of Fireballs. With the Wand of Fireballs, you are with the highest of the heavy hitters, and depending on how many you're able to target and how often those are going to come up, if you're going to be able to do it 2, maybe even 3 times in a adventuring day, then you are looking at being well ahead. It's that marriage of these 2 features that makes that character click. But I don't believe I've ever, other than something like the Artificer, I don't think I've ever recalled having a character that was so dependent on the idea of a magic item, but that's because that's their best class feature is using a magic item. So I have to stress these out and try and point you towards the ones that are going to be relatively easy to get that give high yield. And then at level 10, we're going to be talking about yet another ASI. And at this point, if you have that 19 dex and you took, let's say you took Sentinel and you took a Defensive Duelist, I would probably settle for something like Piercer. It's not dramatic. It's not a huge bump, but that an extra point is still an extra point. It really just depends on where you are in every other way. If you're behind, if you don't have the Wand of Fireballs, then Piercer is going to have some value to you. If not, if you've got the Wand of Fireballs, that extra point becomes a little bit less important. And then, of course, at 13th level, you get, I'm just jumping ahead of things to look forward to, you get Use Magic Device at level 13, and that makes all this even better. So this is just rogues are fun characters to play, and this one is really dangerous. It's like, I can't tell you how satisfying it's going to be doing that kind of an effect on the enemy. And I'm just talking about simple items here. There's going to be all kinds of stuff you're going to be able to use a magic action to be able to jackpot with. Just a really great and fun character. All right. Well, that's all I've got. If you enjoyed the video, please like, please share, please subscribe. And if you're stuck and you don't know where to go, you can always search for a secret door. Until next time, I cast bless on all of you.